So in that case, why would for those several, let's say a couple thousand companies on the NASDAQ, why would it be the case that only those three parameters of capital D diversity are interesting? Race, gender, and sexual orientation for all 2,000 companies, as opposed to NASDAQ could have done this, which is to say that provide what type of diversity advances your own business's mission and provide that disclosure to investors. That's not what they said, which suggests to me, and I think to a lot of people who have issues with this movement, that it's not really just about making each business run better. It's also about accomplishing some other social objective that has nothing to do with the business. And maybe it's a good social objective, but it's
right.
still,
Okay,
you got to
but
admit it's
you're
something separate from the
contradicting
business.
yourself. You're contradicting yourself in so much of this, Vivek. You are, because NASDAQ is a company that's trying to make as much money as possible and to compete with the New York Stock Exchange, exchanges overseas and not listing at all, just being over the counter, right? They, in their own wisdom, for better or worse, like every other CEO and board of directors, decided, I can't speak for them, that by doing this, that will give more incentive for companies to list with us.
So that's a fair response. That's a fair response. That's a fair response.
That is the only response.
Let's continue pulling on the string.
No,
let's keep pulling on the string, though. Let's keep pulling the string, because where the story ends is it ends with the hand of government. That's right. So who then owns these public companies? Who owns these companies? Who are the top shareholders of most public companies? Large asset managers like BlackRock, Vanguard, index fund managers. Okay. So who are the clients of these index fund managers? The largest clients of these index fund managers are none other than the likes of CalPERS. You'll know this, right? CalPERS is California's pension fund system, New York's pension fund system, et cetera. So here's what I'm surmising now is not what I'm saying now is not surmising. It's not conspiracy. There's just hard reality. CalPERS, the state of New York's pension funds, the pension funds that invest with the large asset managers, effectively have said that you don't get to manage our money unless you adopt certain of these pre-specified commitments. Now, those large pools of capital, you're talking about $500 billion in the case of CalPERS, bigger than that even. Those are not pure market actors, right? Those are arms of the government.
So Mark Cuban and Vivek are debating about wokeness. They go into ESG, DEI. In the intro, you saw something, they're talking about DEI. And Vivek makes a good point of who is enforcing these standards. Is it private citizens? Is it the will of the people enforcing DEI? Or is it state actors? And he went down the line and said, hey, CalPERS, these are these big state pension funds that are the largest assets under management for these investment firms. And the government, right, New York, California, they're saying, hey, you can't manage our money unless you're doing things based on our world views. And that in and of itself should point to the fact that DEI is not something the people wanted, but it's something that's being forced upon the people. Because I can make the easy example. Let's say Alabama. And Alabama says, hey, we don't want, let's say Alabama, in this alternative example of mine, that Alabama had the largest share of money in the country. And they say, hey, we don't let any business manage our funds if they're not pushing a Christian agenda. Many people will know, all these atheists, all these liberal leftists, they'll be mad. They will be so angry about that. They say, oh my God, you can't be forcing your morality or your worldview on other people. Yet this is what they're doing with DEI, with the NASDAQ. Oh, we need people of a certain field. And Mark Cuban, he tries to, I don't know why he does this, but he tries to paint it as a free market kind of thing. When the free market will realize that there's certain fields where Black people are underrepresented in. For instance, physics. I don't think physics, at a certain degree level, there's not an advanced degree in physics or aerospace engineering. One of these fancy engineering degrees, not a single Black person is a holder of a single master's, doctorate degree. And then let's say you put DEI in aerospace engineering, you won't find no qualified Black applicants for those positions. So what you're going to do to make up those numbers, right? And this is my problem with DEI. It's a one size fit all that is doomed to fail. And this is the pushback I would have given Mark Cuban, but Vivek does a great job. But before I go into DEI, there's another topic that I want to touch on, climate change. As you guys know, I know a lot about climate change. I disagree with a lot of the framings of the climate change agenda. And I want to give you guys just a 2-minute clip of Vivek and him discussing that, and we'll get right back to DEI. Let's take a look.
To me, I believe climate change is real. I believe it's man-made. And if that is the case, I'm going to be for anything that mitigates that risk, because there's nothing more important to me in the value chain, right, in my risk analysis and dealing with probability, then what's going to create the best world for my kids? That's
so
it.
So I'll say a word about my own views on climate change. We don't have to debate this because the more important part is the business part, although we can debate the climate change part too. So do I believe global surface temperatures are going up? Yes, I do. Do I believe that there are man-made causes that may be playing a role in that? It appears plausible that could actually be the case. However, I do not believe that is anywhere near an existential risk for humanity. And
so
here's
let's
why,
just
right?
talk probability. Okay, go ahead.
So just a couple facts, because you could put probabilities around it. But if you look at the hard realities, are 8 times as many people die of cold temperatures today rather than warm ones. The Earth is now covered by more green surface area today than it was a century ago because carbon dioxide is actually sustenance, plant food effectively.
Okay.
And the right answer to all of these temperature-related deaths, cold or hot, is more abundant and plentiful access to energy, which requires fossil fuels. So
what if
for
you're
that
wrong?
reason, what's that?
What if you're wrong? What if you're wrong?
So there's
What's
some tail problem.
What's because we don't know. Nobody knows for certain, right?
So the
you
what
can
if you're wrong
model all
argument,
this stuff.
I can engage with that. Right? Because I think that's a legitimate. Even if there's a 1% chance you're wrong, how do you know? My only answer to that is you could be wrong in both directions, right?
Of course you can. Of
The
course you can. But
reality
in my case, it costs money. In your case, your kids and my kids could be French fries, and their kids could have no chance.
The part I'm interested in, though, for the business point, okay? Why should it be an individual business or a CEO that takes into account what they're doing for their own business to address climate change? Wouldn't that not make your business less competitive relative to Chinese peers?
Well, it depends. No,
none of whom, by the way, give the first care about climate change.
I think the "what if you're wrong" claim is rich coming from a lot of these climate change people is because these climate change people don't let people of alternative views explain themselves on national TV. What gets national attention? The climate change position or the people who question climate change? I'll wait. And usually they try to frame the people who are against the climate change, or at least the approach that's been widely accepted by people like Mark Cuban about climate change. Oh, this is the correct way to address it. But when Vivek pointed out, hey, we could be wrong both ways, of course, but I could lose money. No, you could lose lives. I talked about how we live in a world where we require an abundance of energy. And the only energy source that could cheaply and efficiently produce the energy and keep up with the energy demands of the human race currently is fossil fuels, nuclear energy being a close second. Because fossil fuels, to produce the same quality of energy, is a lot cheaper than if you try to get solar and wind to do it. There's a reason why solar and wind effectively, even though it's been pushed on our throats for years. 2008, Obama put out a lot of subsidies for electric companies, solar and wind companies to take off, and all of them has failed, wasting taxpayer money because solar and wind cannot replace or cannot meet the energy demands of most of the entire world. Actually, I think only 8% of the infrastructure is being powered by solar and wind. And guess what? The wind turbines that produce wind energy still needs fossil fuels to operate. So why we are making such a complicated and an expensive choice that's not even giving us the same quality of life? And I made the medical, like, it's life-threatening because I quoted something that Mark Cuban said. He said he wants to create the best world for his kids. And the difference between me and a lot of climate changers is that I believe in climate danger, not climate change. Just because the climate change doesn't mean it's a threat to me and my survival. And that is a distinction that I wish Vivek could have pointed out to Mark Cuban, but that's just my argument. That's my talking point. But I'm worried about climate danger. So when Vivek brought up the chances that, hey, 8 times more people died of the cold than of the heat, then global warming is actually a benefit to human flourishing because more humans, the environment is being created is more survivable for human beings. And all this probability mess that he tried to play around, I say it's low probability. My argument's always been that the climate catastrophization of everything has been greatly exaggerated by these climate changers because all their prediction models has been wrong. You 0 for 60 and you still want credibility. You still think that, oh my God, my kids are going to be scorched to death. No, they're not. You just trying to dramatize everything to get people scared to go along with essentially socialism, massive government spending. Mark Cuban and Vivek, we're going to do a live reaction commentary on top of the video. They're going to talk about wokeness. And this is where I want to focus the segment on, which is on DEI, because I think DEI is unattainable because in certain job fields, there's less qualified black people than actual representation. Some job fields, there's only 5% of the workforce that are qualified if you want to focus on group, black people, right? Certain job fields, I forget which one there are, but there's certain job fields where the amount of qualified blacks are less than the representation numbers. That means you inadvertently make these black people more valuable or give them a higher perceived value merely because of the color of their skin. And this is why I say affirmative action is another form of privilege, racism, because essentially you're valuing someone more just because of the color of their skin, which is racism. That's how I grew up. I think that's racism, obvious. But people don't want to admit that. They still want to pretend, oh, these people, they need our help. And then when we make the argument that, hey, you're lowering standards to fill these positions, Mark Cuban and them will say, no, we're not. We're only hiring the most qualified black people. They just happen to be black. We only focus on qualified black people. Okay, this field has only 5% of qualified black people. Your representation number is only 13%. That means it's impossible for any of your people in this industry to have representation because there's not enough qualified blacks in these fields. So you're going to have to what? Lower the standards. But they play these little word games, and I get tired of it. But enough of my rambling. Let's get into the video.
Fine. So let's say in the name of DEI, right? Pfizer. Okay. This is an example I gave you. We started talking about it. Pfizer sets a target, and call it a quota, call it a target.
It's not a quota.
Pfizer sets
not a quota.
Pfizer sets.
See, and this is my problem. It's not a quota. A target is a quota. Like that to me is the same thing. What is a target? Something that I'm aiming for. What is a quota? Something that I'm aiming for. Hey, we want to increase our sales by 5%. Is that a target or is that a quota? You can make the argument that it's both. So I'm tired of these little semantic word games. This is what I'm talking about. When it comes to DEI, these people love to play word games. I digress.
It's a target, but it is a very precise numerical target. Now, and this is not picking on one company.
Well, it's percentage. It was a percentage, right?
They're in an industry that I know well, but this is representative.
And I know that industry well too.
Yeah. Right. So it's an industry we both know well, so we're picking this example, but this is not unique to Pfizer Healthcare. It's true across every other industry.
IBM has done it. Others have done it.
Right, right. Something to the effect of, and you people can look up the exact what it is, but the punchline is 32% or so was the number for minorities in certain corporate vice president levels or above. I get it approximately right. Look up exactly what the details, but suppose it's 32% in vice president level corporate executives or above by a certain year in the future. That's a corporate target that they have set. It's my belief, right, that these types of demographic goals, if that's your basis for setting a target, that is incompatible with pure meritocracy. Where
absolutely not.
Yeah, and that's why I know you disagree.
I disagree wholeheartedly with Mark Cuban. I don't know how you argue that. If you're not focusing on merit, then what are you focusing on? Like let's put this example into the NBA, right? This is the easiest example. This is the easiest argument to really push back on if Mark Cuban is going to try to disagree with the framing. Hey, why are you focusing on demographics? You're making a different goal compared to meritocracy because the groups that tend to produce the best doctors, right? The most qualified engineers, the most qualified executives happen to be what? White, Asian, Jewish. These people end up producing these qualified people, right? Because of their culture, because of other environmental factors. Who knows? But it's not because of their race. Now, let's look at black people. What are black people, as a group, what are we known for producing? The best athletes, right? You can say that social conditioning. You can say due to environmental factors. Who cares? Culture, it doesn't matter. Black people are good at of producing athletes, entertainers, right? That's who usually we overrepresent. And look at sports. 30% of the population, but we make up 78% of the NBA. Isn't that representative, Mark Cuban? Right? But then if we apply your standards, oh, absolutely not. We're going to find the most qualified white people. White people make up 66% of the population. So that means you're going to make majority of the NBA white because this will be representative. And the fact that they don't equally apply their standards across industries where it's predominantly dominated by so-called minorities proves the validity of what Vivek is saying. That is not based on merit. It's not focused on merit. It's a distraction from merit. And inadvertently, you see that it hurts the quality of a service and a product when you go about this line. Because I saw studies during layoffs, people who are considered DEI takes the biggest hit because most of the people fired happen to be minorities. And that usually because either their productivity is low, because businesses look at the numbers and they say, hey, look, who gives us more bang for our buck, right? And technically, if you got in there through DEI efforts, you're usually the first one on the chopping block because you're not producing on paper what the company needs to justify spending money on your salary.
So give me your view.
Sure. So targets are one thing, right? They're not a quota. If it was a quota, you would be able to, let me take a step back. There are these things called EEOC reports, right?
Where Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, that's what it is, yep.
Right, where they actually have to disclose the numbers for those vice president positions by male, female, white, black, Asian, other races, and biracial, right? And so they have to disclose them, and not all companies do. They have to report it. They don't have to disclose. Not all companies do, but Pfizer does. And when you go and actually look at the numbers on the EEOC report, they're nowhere close to those targets. And in fact, in some years, they actually reduced the number of people you would think would benefit from DEI, right? Based off of the traditional DEI views.
And that's Black accurate. Americans, what you just said is accurate. It's fact.
Right.
So why bother to specify that target or goal in the first place? Because your point is they're not even meeting it. And you're right about that in many companies.
Just, man, when you say they're not meeting it, that's just confirmation that it's not a quota. Because a lot of people will take that number and project that as a quota. Why would they do it? It's a quota, but they never meet it.
See, he just admitted the thing out loud. It's all for branding. It's also just look good. Oh, look, dude, we're trying to do this, even though it's not even possible, right? If someone told you something, hey, I have a product, and let's say you want high-speed internet. We're trying to give you this high-speed internet, but if we don't give it to you, at least we tried. What you as a customer, would you pay for that product? Hell no. So why in the first place? And this is he just admitted it. Vivek's like, why the hell are you putting out a goal that you're not even trying in reality to hit? It's just to make them look good, and that has been my argument the entire time. DEI is meant to make corporations look good, not actually do good. Because if they wanted to do good, in my view, this is how I would do it. If I was the CEO and you wanted to push DEI, you're mad that I'm not investing in underserved communities, even though I come from that. I'd be like, yo, the source of the problem isn't even at the college level, high school level. It's elementary, middle school, because that's usually where the effery happens. We want these kids to have good quality education, but if they don't come from a good parent house, a good family structure, if you're raised by a single mom, right? Because there's studies that show that parent involvement improves academic outcomes. So the problem is not even in the ability of the corporations themselves to fix. It's a social problem that's producing the lack of qualified Black applicants to the point where these people have to lower or make exceptions for people of a certain group, skin color, right? Lower admission rates in medical school for Black students. But the problem was already set. You had to go even earlier than college. And this is the argument that many people who actually want to increase the quality of the workforce in these minority groups, this is the argument that they laid out in front of these people. But Mark Cuban, they're looking for numbers. They're looking for flash, not substance. Because you can't get any credit by investing money into the education system. That's hard to do that. Oh, look at our corporate CEOs. Half of them are women. So you put out this question, did I get this job because I'm a woman? Was I just barely qualified? Could there be a more qualified candidate? And you're sacrificing quality. Because if I told you in the technology, the most qualified person is an Asian, but this Black person is just qualified enough, but this person is really qualified. You're going to pick the Black applicant over the super qualified Asian because of the fact that, he gives us a number. He helps us look good. But then the productivity suffers. The quality of our product suffers. He could have done, and the Black person could be doing a good job. The Black engineer could be doing a great job, but the Asian would have been like innovative. He could have been a game-changing employee in your company, but you sacrifice that in the name of a quota. And this is the priority thing I'm talking about. What is your priority? Because if you're putting a quota that you're not planning to meet, then you inadvertently are saying that we're pretending to care about this stuff. We're not really actually caring about this stuff. And I hate people who tries to look good and not actually be good. Focus on actions, not words. That's a saying for a reason. Because it's easy to say, we want 30% of the population, but what are you actually doing to execute? And this is what a lot of these woke Black people complain about. So I say, why have the standard in the first place? Make it under your own ability. Make it under your own merit. How about you go back and you create social incentives, schools that incentivize Black kids to learn? But parent involvement is a big indicator of academic success. And a lot of these Black kids come from single parent households and they're not academically curious. I was an exception merely because I was just naturally curious. I wanted to learn stuff, but that's not the case for most kids. So this is why most black kids fall behind. That's why most black kids are not academically qualified to get into college at a high rate with other minorities like Asians. But instead, they want to ignore all those social problems and think it's a systemic one. And this is my problem. Systemic racism isn't stopping black people. It's black people's own culture, values, and behaviors that's stopping them from getting the outcomes that they're looking for. And they think DEI is going to get them, which is a lie. We're gonna play this video for like 2 more minutes, and then I'll wrap up.
None of the companies ever meet it.
What's the purpose of setting that goal on the basis of race or gender in the first place, Mark?
When you talk about portfolio management in your company, right? And you talked about you're going to have failures and you're going to have successes. And you probably had a target for your return on equity that you wanted to get, right? And so you said, I've raised this money, I'm investing this money, we're going to have hits and misses, and our target return is 23%. Same thing, right? Good companies look at their employees as capital, right? As intellectual capital. And where you want to have a better portfolio outcome for your intellectual capital, there's certain things that you want to see happen. One of them is diversity.
No, diversity goes counter to that. And I agree with his point. Corporations do look at people as human capital because that's what you are. Even in a group level, for instance, let's say if I just take the Black America, we focus on human capital too. Our human capital is giving us a certain result. Our human capital is 13% of the population, but we commit 60% of the crime. Our black men commit 50% of the crime. Our women are our most educated human capital within the black community, but our net worth is still lower than the white America. Our human capital is half of them are under 30, which means that half our population in the Black America is low skilled. Sorry, that's the reality. Young people tend to be lower skilled than older Americans. So if half your population is under the age of 30 as a community, as a collective, and other communities, they have a higher average age, it's no wonder there's a racial disparity when it comes to wealth, because we're a community that's human capital is almost half of it is low skilled. This is why the average income of the black community is like 30, 48K. And the average income for white community is like 55. But if you look at Asians, they're near high 5 figures, 6 figures because of the human capital within each community. And my argument has always been, hey, look, we have to create an incentive where we leave the next generation with more skills, more knowledge, more ability than the previous generation. Because for too long, it operated the opposite way. In the black community in the past, they were more educated, more skilled, more entrepreneurial than the generation that we have right now, because they left us in a worse position than they were, right? In the 60s, Martin Luther King was a 3rd generation college graduate. In 2024, most black people can't say that. Oh, I'm a 3rd generation college graduate. Not a lot of black people can say that, but that used to be the norm in the 60s. Single motherhood used to be seen as an anomaly in the black community. Only 20% of black children were raised under single parent household. Now in 2024, 70% of them are raised in a single parent household. And I just made the argument about how there's a correlation with parent involvement. Is it easier to be involved in your kids' schoolwork when you're a single parent or when you're a married couple? Behavior. So that means the corporations, they can't do nothing about this. This is something that the people themselves have to make a decision to change. The Irish people did not change their situation in America until they took personal responsibility for the decisions, actions, and an environment they created for their future generations. And now look how successful they are. And when I demand that black people do the same thing, they don't want to do it because they want to blame somebody. They want to use racism as an alibi. And this is my problem with people who use racism to justify, oh, why all these negative outcomes happen to me in my life. No, you're using it as an excuse to push away from that work that you need to actually do to make an impact in your life. Because your personal decisions have more impact on your personal life than racism and any other external factor. I cannot control what happens to me, but I can damn sure control how I respond. And that's the mentality I think Black America needs to take if it wants to be successful. It cannot rely on government. There is no saviors. No one can save you out of your own problems. This is something that black people save themselves from. It don't matter how much money they throw at you. It don't matter how much money Goldman Sachs invests in your black women. The average net worth of a black woman is $5. Yes, you heard that right, because of student loans. So so all these, you're just throwing money into a fire. because it's not your problem to fix in the first place. And this is the problem I've been trying to point out to Black America. It ain't gonna change until you change. Because you could lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And that's the reality of the whole DEI, all this stuff. This is why all these quotas fail, because they're not actually touching the core issue. They're just putting a bandage over it. They're putting a bandage over a broken leg. And they're not doing they're not doing the hard thing that needs to be done. And this is only going to happen through generations. It's not going to happen in one generation. But that takes a mental paradigm shift. But hey, I digress. You can watch the full thing in the link in the description below. I left it in there. I think it was a good discussion. I disagree with a lot of Mark Cuban's points as a Black person, because end of the day, the number one reason why I hate DEI is the fact that because of my color of my skin, white liberals would like to take credit for the fact that I am successful in my life. Oh, you would have never got these job opportunities if it wasn't for us. That's the underlying tone of DEI, and that's what I hate. Because I'm like, I would have made it regardless of my skin color. But white liberals and Black liberals, especially Black liberals, they like to pretend that without DEI, without affirmative action, no one will ever make it into any of these positions, which is a lie. But I digress. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Appreciate you guys watching to the end of the video, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.